Hey, it's really good to be here. We're looking at working with your COO. It's an unusual topic, but I think it's one as entrepreneurs we really need to take a look at and begin to unpack. I must admit, most entrepreneurs, and this is a generalization, they're more fly by the seat of their pants sort of people like, hey, I've got that vision, I'm going for that vision, and just don't get in my way. Particularly, don't get in my way customer service or don't get in my way actually delivering the products. I've got the vision. I'm heading towards this vision. And it's often that another person in the organization which ultimately makes things happen. There are the nuts and bolts. They make sure that people get paid or clients get paid. They make sure their supplier gets paid. They make sure that I's are dotted and the T's are crossed on contracts and things like that. And the entrepreneur has already leapt down the road ahead, and that person called the chief operating officer is making the vision actually happen behind them. Yeah, developing a successful working relationship with your CEO in your business is often critical to achieving your goals. And learning how to manage that relationship, that tension between often the CEO role provided by the entrepreneur and the COO, which is, hey, what about process? What about systems? What about dotting all those I's and crossing all those T's? All that sort of thing. There's often a tension between those. And also quite often it ends up breaking away. The COO says, I'm done with this because this entrepreneur is completely psychotic. They realize the importance of process and so forth. Let me share with you a story that happened with me. In my case, for one of my companies, I was working away with this other guy, a business partner in this particular one, and he was driving me crazy. Absolutely crazy. Because he was exactly that. He was just talking about process, procedures, all those sort of things. And I was talking about vision, direction, strategy. And it was like we were talking two different languages. This is about 14 years ago. And I remember it came to a head one time, and had a really big argument. And having an argument at a founding level of co-founders is not a good thing. And the best solution to any time of having a great big argument is to go out for dinner together. So we did that. We went out for dinner, and during the dinner, it was a bit nerve-wracking. There was steam coming out of my ears, and I could see he was flashing lightning bolts out of his eyes at me a few times and that sort of stuff. And we had once again, a heated argument. And then at one point, and we both sat back and said, hang on a second, I'm protecting your interests. And he said, yes, you are. And I'm protecting yours. I said, yes, you are. And it dawned on me that I was dealing with a person of character. I wasn't dealing with a demonic horde or something like that who's trying to rip apart the business and repossess my soul. No, I was dealing with a person of character. But it was a person of character who just had a different approach. Next 15 years we've been together now, we've gained an enormous appreciation for each other's strengths and weaknesses. And with the result, this business is doing millions of dollars. It's gone forward with leaps and bounds. And I can truthfully say it would not have got there without his characteristics, which are largely, not 100%, largely that of a COO. And mine is largely that of the entrepreneur, the vision and so forth. And he is an amazing guy who can have incredible processes and procedures. But it took a revelation of understanding that this person is not malevolent, but they're a person who just perceives the business differently. So with the result, we've been working together for a long time now. And it was interesting. We hired a new guy a couple of years ago, and he's a bit more of my temperament. He's in this business development area, and he would naturally be that way. And I said to him, there is nothing like having an awesome COO in your corner when it hits the fan with a client. because having that awesome CEO, he'll know exactly all the numbers. He'll know exactly what has happened. He'll have all the procedures and it been nailed down and everything. And when you go and talk with the client to resolve, say, some difficult situation, you're going from a position of strength and knowledge versus, I don't know what's going on here. And it was really a light bulb moment for this particular guy as well. And because, of course, things go wrong with clients from time to time. And he experienced what it was like to have a great COO. And so, as entrepreneurs, what do we do? What do you do when your business grows to the point where you say, is it time for a COO? Do I need to actually take some of these things off my desk so I can work on the business, so I can have another person working in the business alongside of me? So that was my story and my experience. Michele or Jeff, what's it been like for you guys in the businesses you've been around? Are you the COO or the fly by the seat of your pants entrepreneur I talked about? Maybe I'll jump to you, Jeff, first. What's your role that you find you traditionally provide in businesses in this sort of nature? Or have you seen things of what I've just described to you?
I think, Michael, the COO role is very important and one that a lot of times we don't think of at the beginning. In my career, I've actually been a COO, I've been a CEO, and I've been a CMO. The only one I will never be is a CFO because I'm not a particularly good numbers person. And a COO can take on a different shape and form in different companies. So I think that's one of the interesting things. But the real thing is that the COO is the operator, right? And I think in most successful startups, you certainly need a visionary. You certainly need a product person if you're selling a product. But to achieve that vision and to build that product, you also need someone who really is an operator, who knows how to get things done, to set up the processes and procedures. And sometimes COO is responsible for HR, building the team. All of those things could fall under that operator's role. And I think that's critical. And I think one of the things we talk about a lot here in the Complete Entrepreneur, and we've talked about it in the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour as well, is delegation. When you're a founder of a company and a startup in the early days, you're doing everything. You and your co-founders, if there are any, are doing everything. And at some point, if you're going to grow and scale your business, you have to learn to let go. And that's probably one of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur. And something I think I and all of us have potentially struggled with at times is letting go of things, handing off responsibilities to other people so that the company can grow and that you can stay focused on the things that you are truly the best at. And oftentimes the first step of that letting go is bringing on that COO or having one of your co-founders in that COO role to really take on a lot of those operational responsibilities. So I don't know if I exactly answered your question, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, Jeff. And I think it's an interesting thing is that at some point in time, every business as it grows, it will end up putting in a COO type person. When I say every business, I'm sure there's exceptions out there. Like just before I jump across to you, Michele, and get your thoughts on this topic, if you're a person in the audience there, let's imagine you are a COO. How have you dealt with the entrepreneur? I'd love to get your side of the equation. Like, have they completely driven you crazy? Please stick your hand up. Or if you're an entrepreneur and you're saying, where do I get a good COO from, operating officer from? What sort of characteristics should I look for in them and that sort of stuff? Then you got those sort of questions, then stick your hand up. We'd love to have you on the stage here and let's have a great discussion about it. But just people mull over what my invitation is there, Michele. What have you got to share on this topic in your experience, in your wide business career? What's it been like dealing with COOs, or have you been the COO in them?
Actually, I have been the COO. I was at the last company, Dot Club, before I took on another role. Yeah, for me, what I found is, yeah, the role of a COO can vary so greatly. I think of it more than anything in the company. Here, here we go. I think of the COO more than anybody in the company has to really practice a great range of flexibility. I think they really have to go to what the company needs, what the people in the company need. So, what do I mean by that? They really need to be observing what's going on and making sure that communications are flowing and that there's issues and the difficult conversations to be had, that they're not afraid to have it and they jump in there and make things happen. I have seen COOs that are very analytical and really focus more on metrics, which is something that I think we all should do. But I've also seen COOs that really are like a jack of all trades. And for me, I think that just depends on what the company needs. And one of their key talents, one could say, is to be able to identify that and not be afraid to be jump in there and help get things done.
Yeah, do you also find, Michele, that the role of a COO is almost to protect the entrepreneur from themselves so that the entrepreneur can do what they're good for? And the entrepreneur, by the way, assuming that they're also providing being the CEO, but is to protect the entrepreneur from, dare I say, messing up some of the stuff, and they can go ahead and do what they're really good at, which is the visionary thing, the client say facing, and that sort of stuff. Do you think that's the role of a COO?
Well, I would say they definitely should be paving the path so that the CEO or the CMO or whoever's leading sales and business development, yes, so they're not worrying about the day-to-day operations or the execution of the business. So they absolutely, that would be one way to say it, that they don't, CEOs don't end up gravitating to the nuances, just trying to solve little problems. Because at the end of the day, that doesn't help anyone. You really do need somebody who's going to take that responsibility and really work with all levels of folks in the organization.
Yeah. I think about my own experiences in various businesses, and particularly the current one. One of the biggest difficulties I've had across the years is relinquishing the knowledge of knowing everything, and to know that, sure, that the process and the procedures are being dealt with, and that issue is successfully brought to a conclusion. But to actually not know the details, because you can't know the details of everything. And as an entrepreneur, that can actually be quite challenging, is to give up some of that knowledge as such and have trust in your team and trust in your other co-founders or your executive and so forth, and knowing that they're dealing with it. And that means your mind space can then focus on other things. And that has actually been quite a challenge for me, particularly also being a techie as well. And when someone says to me, "Oh yeah, what server is such and such on?" and I say to them, "I got no idea. I actually don't know." That's why we have a person in charge of tech. They can actually answer these questions. Yeah, and it was a challenge for me. Do you find, coming back to yourself, Michele, do you find that at times in your role, did you play, even with Pour.com or something like that, or Startup.club, is do you find that you just don't know everything because you can't know everything because it's impossible? And what was that like? To be able to hand that over to someone like a COO that may be playing those roles.
I'll tell you, one of the best feelings is when you know that you can hand that over to a very capable person, a person that could even do it perhaps better than you. That's an amazing feeling and it's really growth. On the flip side of it, the worst feeling is feeling that you can't hand things over because you don't have folks that are capable of it. And that's where I feel that the balance really comes, and the COO at their best are really working to make sure, of course, that processes are there, but that the right people are in the right positions. Like, you can do processes and planning all day long, but if you don't have the right people in positions, you're really not going to be able to be successful. So I think, yeah, of course, it's wonderful when it works, it's horrible when it doesn't work. And I think it's a lot about also having the right people that can implement and follow through on processes.
Completely agree with you on that, Michele. That's for sure. You're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur, and we're looking at the topic of working with your COO. And you might not even have a COO at this time, but you know what? At some stage, your business may grow to the point where you begin to think, I need to get someone else in here. So we're looking at that topic, and it's great to see everyone here. But Mario, welcome to the stage in The Complete Entrepreneur. I'd love to get your thoughts on this topic.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much. And thank you, guys. It's been amazing what I've been hearing. And totally agree with Richard and Michelle. I think it's about character and it also depends on structure and how you get started. If, for example, for myself, I'm still an early founder, a couple of years, 3 years plus now, but I do identify the importance of having a COO, but I'm at the crossroad where I want to identify that is the actual right person to take that position. And in order to do that, I relaxed. Since I'm a sole founder, I had the privilege to get to pick people into their positions. I think this is different if you have co-founders and you all pick roles at start with your strength. But being the sole founder, I get to delegate, or you could do this, you could do that. So what I do, I currently have someone on service operations, not COO fully. And now the reason is because I'm looking at his character and what he can do and how he's coming up with it. So when we get big enough for him to really take that full COO, I can really say he has walked up to that position and he has shown that he can do it. And I totally agree with what everyone here have been saying about details. For me, I agree the CEO has to be someone who sees the big vision. So it's almost like a top-down scenario. He sees the big vision, but the COO should pay attention to these minute details that actually makes the big dreams come true. So it's almost like the little things matters a lot, and the CEO should pay attention to those little things, while the CEO can be a dreamer and also can sense the energy within the space, within the workspace, within the theme. He can know that this person's character is down, this person's... So it's almost like determining the strength of people's character and getting to assign them in their right roles. Michelle has also said, I think that's a major work of the CEO. He should do that. He should know his team very well, know their strength, know their energy, breathe the culture, and then he can assign them. Why the CEO should actually keep everyone in tracks and keep operations going on. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, Mario. You've hit so many things there, and it's fabulous. And really appreciate your input just there. And I think you nailed it in many respects. It's about character and what is the character of the person that can actually perform that role. So it'd be good to be able to unpack that a little bit more. So, what are the characteristics you think, Jeff, coming to yourself now, of a COO? What's some of the characteristics that you would look for in a COO, and what is it that you think that are the standout ones versus the possibly the secondary characteristics of a great?
I think you all talked about character, and that's really important. And I also think in many instances, the COO is actually the one dealing with the team a lot. And in many companies, the COO may be responsible ultimately for the company culture. Of course, the company culture comes from the top down and the bottom up, but it's the COO oftentimes that leads that. I can remember very clearly many years ago working for a company where the COO was somewhat of a tyrant and had a lot of practices that were really not good in terms of hiring and firing. He had a practice of when someone was being fired, they were escorted out of the building within minutes of being let go, no time to gather their stuff. And he always did it in a very visual way where everyone in the company saw it happening. And that set a really terrible tone and really affected the culture of that company. So I think it's really important that the COO is someone who leads by example, especially if the company has a quirky CEO. Founders are often very creative people, they're often very driven people, and sometimes they may not have the best personality to drive the culture of a company. And then it falls to the COO to really set that tone and to be that internal face of the company that people can rely on and look up to. Not that they wouldn't rely on and look up to the CEO, but the CEO may not be in that role. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does, Jeff, and really appreciate your input on that. So I began to think about what are the characteristics. When I look at the different COOs I've worked with over the many years I've been an entrepreneur for, and some of the characteristics I found is number one is they have to be trustworthy. They've got to tell me the truth. And if they don't tell me the truth, because I want to hear the good and the bad, or if they shelter me from the bad things, I need to hear the both. I need to hear both sides, not just all the fluffy white clouds and everything is great. I want to hear also the fact that there's an earthquake in the business happening right now. Yeah, and I need to hear that. I also find that I look at them and I want them to be practical and very practical. And there are a couple of the things when I think about a COO that I look for. There's a few others I'll talk about shortly. But you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur, and it's great to have you here with us. If you're a COO, then you're saying, let me tell you, I've got some stories for you of what it's like to work with an entrepreneur. And or if you're an entrepreneur and you're saying, this is how I work with my COO, we'd love to hear from you. Put your hand up and we'll welcome you to the stage. But in the meantime, I'll jump across to Chris. Chris, it's great to have you on The Complete Entrepreneur. And what's your thoughts on this topic?
It's a very interesting topic, and I want to refer to someone that maybe a lot of people have heard of, Charles Demings. He talks about in a company, as a worker, there's only so much you can do within the existing system, if you won't call it, in the company. And it's the managers, the leaders, and particularly the COO's job to see how those systems are impacting how their employees are able to work, and then find ways to improve that system and make it a better way, or allow for a better performance of the workers, because he illustrates that you can only perform to the level of what the system allows. You cannot actually influence the system. Obviously, there's going to be some that say you can, but there are some limitations. If you're not the one that implements and enforces the system, there are limitations, and so you have to abide by those limitations. So despite your best efforts at being a really good worker, you are going to fall short if the system falls short. And like I said, the CEO's role is to be able to identify what those things are and improve upon them.
Chris, is this where the entrepreneurs there say, I've got this great idea. We need to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And then they say, I've got this other great idea, and just run off their feet. They're working like 16-hour days and things like that. And then a COO type person comes in and says, look, you know what? I can actually save you 8 of those hours. We just need to build a process. And we need to be able to scale that process. And this is how we then do it. Is that what you're really talking about there in the nitty gritty, what it means to be an entrepreneur?
That is part of what it is, but there's also what works when you're 2 people, or what works when you have 10 clients is not necessarily going to work when you have 1,000 clients, if you're that kind of company. And so it is understanding not just what process to put in place right away, but also what to continue to do to improve upon that system as things evolve, as things grow. And
Yeah, that's so
yes,
true.
if it's done, the entrepreneur can save hours a day.
Yeah, it's so true
Go
what
ahead.
you're saying. It makes me wonder, like some of these big tech companies, Google's, the Airbnb, Uber, and so forth like that. Yeah, they're tech, but it makes me wonder behind the scenes there must be an amazing COO who's able to go along and empower the rest of the organization to scale to literally billions of people across the world using their services. And that's,
No,
would that be an example of what you're talking about?
no doubt there's great COOs there, but I'll wager this: the bigger the company, the more holes they have in their system, the more room for improvement they have. At least that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the bigger the company, there's also those holes become entrepreneurial opportunities for smaller, more nimble companies, quite often. And that's why it's so exciting being an entrepreneur. I just want to jump down to Colin. Welcome to the stage, Colin, and
No, thank
then
you.
I'll come across to Naja as well. What's your thoughts on this? Of working as an entrepreneur, working with a COO, did you find they were a boat anchor, or did you find they were like a person which suddenly empowered you as an entrepreneur? What is it that your experience with working with a COO?
Yeah, I actually think that as a company wants to scale or needs to scale, that hiring the right C-level executives around you is extremely important. And I don't know if you've touched upon the profile of a COO or even a CTO or even a CMO. You're really going to want people who have dominant instinct. In the case of COO, probably a DC or a DS, dominant and stable or dominant and consistent. And the reason for that is, and I'm talking specifically about the dominance, and I do see a lot of companies make this mistake. The reason for that is they have to lead a lot of people in order to scale this company. And they need to have that leadership skill and dominance to push their team forward. It's extremely important to hire people who have that capability. And I also talk about they should have some analytical understanding or even some stable, they should be very stable as well. So they should be very, when I say S in the disc profile system, we're really referring to people who are, the best way, probably the best way to say it is OCD, right? So if you have a dominant OCD type, that can actually make for a very good chief operating officer. And I can tell you at Hostopia, we scaled that company to 600 employees. We went public, we did all that. And we hired a Peter Costanadu, and we hired him as a call center manager. Ran him through the disc profile, and he moved all the way up to president and replaced me after I had sold the company and committed to my 3 years, and my time was up. The day I could leave, I left, but he replaced me ultimately. So that's just something to consider. I do think that does that sort of cover what we're talking about here, Michael? I know I jumped in the middle of it. Apologize about the lateness of my entry.
Yeah, no, it's interesting getting your perspective on things because the thing that I think when I really look at my own business experience of what are some of the characteristics of some of the great COOs I've worked with, and how did I engage with them? And it's not just about scaling people. And like some COOs, they need to scale the people and relate to 600 employees, you just said. Sometimes it's not that. We have not scaled people, but we've scaled systems in my current business. So we deal with actually right now, I think it's about 8 billion requests hit our servers every single day, and we have to process them and all that sort of stuff. And it's a lot of procedures, a lot of processes and stuff. And it's a lot of mind space for a COO type character who can step in and be incredibly practical and pragmatic, where they've got an incredible detailed and deliberateness to every one of their actions, which I find is actually quite liberating as an entrepreneur. It's that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Colin?
I like how you talk about systems. And I know the book, The E-Myth, if anyone here in the audience
That's a
wants
great
a
book.
book
That's a
to
great
help
book.
them to scale their business, there's no better book than The E-Myth. I think that's all about creating systems. And as our company scaled, we brought in a CEO coach, and he helped us implement, at the time, it was called the Rockefeller Habits, and it was written by Vern Harnish. And our coach worked with us, and we've implemented a lot of goal setting and a lot of KPIs, a lot of different systems were implemented. And I credit those systems for helping us scale. Yeah, you can get away with it You can be ad hoc, you can do this, you can do that. You can get away with it early on in a startup. But when you want to scale that business, you're going to need to start to think about systems and implement those kind of systems. I recommend the Rockefeller Habits, or actually, he's got one up that's more updated, it's called Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. I think that's an excellent book if you really want to learn how to scale.
Yeah, there's another interesting book, which is the E Myth you mentioned, but there's also the E Myth is going back to it. I read a book just recently by Simon Sinek, and it says start with why. And in this book, he talks about that every business that's founded should ask, why are we doing this? And his view is the outcome is the fact that it's profitable. And every business needs to be profitable to be sustainable. But why are you doing it is more important. So he went and expounds on the fact that like Apple is Think Different or Harley Davidson's like freedom on the road. And they inspire why so much that people go on tattoo on their own bodies the Harley Davidson logo and this sort of stuff. And it's an interesting concept. He then goes and says, but with every strong why person, which is the entrepreneur, there's a how person. How are we going to do it? And he expounds upon that of for every Steve Jobs there's a Wozniak, for every Gates there's an Allen, and so forth. And any of these great big companies, you quite often you'll have a Hewlett and a Packard and so forth like that, and Intel in the similar sort of situation. And you've got this great why person like shooting for the stars, but then the how person comes on and really makes it happen. They're the COO. So it's a great book. If you haven't looked at it, it's called Start with Why by Simon Sinek. It's Sinek. Fabulous book, and I would recommend reading that. Really interesting. But anyway, you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur, and we're tackling the whole topic of working with your COO. And it's a major issue which is going to help businesses like yours scale. So, Najat, been very patient all this time, and really appreciate you doing that, being so patient, Najat. So, welcome to the stage of The Complete Entrepreneur. Would love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Welcome to the stage, Najat. Sorry about that, Najat. You were getting some feedback there. I think you turned off your microphone again. I think we've just
Michael,
lost Najat.
I was let's jump in here. One of the things that entrepreneurs fail to do is fail to scale is that they don't get out of the way themselves, that they're not able to let go. And I think that's a mental process that anyone who runs a business has got to learn to let things go and trust others to help them scale that business. And in the case of leadership positions like a CTO or a COO, that can often be it can be very challenging for the entrepreneur. And I think that's an important concept because 99% of businesses in the United States are small businesses, and they do fail to scale. And a lot of that is simply delegating responsibilities, not tasks. And I've used that line a number of times on your show, but it's true. If you are always delegating tasks, if you're the one always responsible, then you're never going to scale that company. If you delegate responsibilities and you say, okay, you're now responsible for all facility management of the building, then at 3 o'clock in the morning, if something goes wrong, they're not calling you, they're calling the person responsible.
Yeah, I love that saying, which is delegate responsibilities, not tasks. But as an entrepreneur, it's actually really difficult sometimes to let go. And it takes a great amount of character to be able to let, and a great amount of trust in that process. And to be quite blunt with you, Colin, I think there's a good reason why 98% of businesses fail to scale is because entrepreneurs in the whole find it difficult to relinquish control. They really do because they like to know that everything's done. Like we're going through this right now where we put a person on in the area as a BDM, and I'm thinking I've got to release some of these clients to this guy and to help manage and take some workload off, say, of my plate. But I know that client so well, and should I do that? And it's actually really quite nerve-wracking, but you've got to do it still. If you don't do it, you'll fail to scale. And that's a really big question, I think, that a lot of entrepreneurs wrestle with. And by the way, it's fine to have a small business as well, if that's your goal. Not where does it say that every business has to go along and grow and become a next unicorn? Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it's fine to have a business and just have it going along and providing a good lifestyle for you and your family and everything like that. There is no problem with that. But if your goal is also to scale, then you're going to have to relinquish some control. So, Radesh, it's great to go along and see you on the Complete Entrepreneur on the stage here. And love to hear your thoughts on this topic. So, Radesh, welcome to the Complete Entrepreneur.
Yes, thank you very much. I just joined. I was not here from the beginning. I don't have much to say.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If you want to mute your microphone, do appreciate your thoughts and the fact that you're wanting to learn and hear about what others are talking about on this topic. So, coming back to the characteristics of a great COO, I mentioned a couple of them. One of the other ones is it can be quite challenging, I think, for an entrepreneur, is they'll often overshadow the entrepreneur's operational ability. In fact, that's their job to do that. So if you're thinking, oh, I'm feeling a bit threatened by this person, they seem to know more about my company than I do. You know what? That's their job, and let them do their job. And that's why you actually employ them to do that, so you can actually hand over the responsibility to them. But it can be very nerve-wracking, as we talked about in that process. So what are some of the characteristics, I'll come back to yourself, Colin, again, that you look for in hiring a great COO? In your experience, what are some of the things, you've mentioned you use a disc model, I know, but what's some of the things you also look for beyond just, say, psychologically profiling someone?
Yeah, other than the dominant and OCD for a COO, those characteristics. I use Jack Welch's line on this one. He says, hire people with runway. And what does he mean by that? If you have a company that's $1 million a year and you want to get to 10 million, hire somebody who's already gone from 1 million to 10 million. If you want to go from 10 million to 100 million, hire that person who's already gone from 10 million to 100 million. By the way, don't go too far with this. Don't hire, if you're at $1 million, somebody who's worked for a $1 billion company. That leap can sometimes be too great for some of those executives to move from a $1 billion company to do it yourself $1 million company. Don't think because someone's got a huge resume that they actually would be ideal. We're looking for that 10x. We're looking for someone who can 10x your business. And that's for CTO as well, and that's for CMO. You're going to look for those people who are comfortable in getting your company to grow to a certain level and have the experience to do so.
Yeah, Colin, I want to emphasize what you said because it's spot on. It's not someone who's been in the role of leading a company at that level. It's someone who's been through the process of growing a company to that level because they're very different situations. And I had the experience at one of the companies that I co-founded where the board wanted us to bring in an experienced, a real CEO as opposed to the founding team, and brought in someone from a very big, very well-known company, but they had already been at the top in their last few jobs. They weren't really the one who had grown the company to that level, and it wasn't as great a fit as everyone had hoped it would be. So, Colin, that's a great point.
I'll tell you, it was hard for me to go from Hostopia, 600 employees, to Club, which was a dozen employees. It was just very hard. You get used to having a lot of perks that come along with having a large company when it comes to doing things. I couldn't even scan a document, I'll be honest with you. And then I'm a CEO of a technology company. Unbelievable. But anyway, and then you go to a smaller business and you have to figure out how to scan the document. By the way, I still don't know how to do it with these darn printers. I use my phone and a scan app on my phone to do it. So in any case, it's a challenge.
Way to go there, Colin. One of the things I personally do is I maintain my own Unix web server for my own personal website, specifically so I try to keep my hands in the coding. And it's a challenge, all those things, I must admit. But yeah, I think one of the bigger challenges is that as an entrepreneur's business grows, you end up becoming more setting policy and managing culture and things like that, where you can then hand that across to someone is like that can then take that culture and then grow those processes and systems and everything like that with that. And getting away, I find that I need to get away on a periodic basis. And the thing when I get away, just myself, as I begin to think about things like what is the culture of my businesses, and each one will be unique, by the way. What is that culture? What is it we're trying to do? What is the next lot of policy type things I need to go and implement to take to the next level of growth? It doesn't mean I then go along and implement those growth strategies or anything. That's for someone else to actually do. But I'm thinking about working on the business and how the business is functioning very broadly versus the detailed side. And this is where the COO really comes in. But anyway, you're listening to The Complete Entrepreneur. We've got like 12 minutes left of this room together and looking at this really interesting topic of working with your COO. And I'd just like to welcome to the stage Bormik. Bormik, it's great to have you here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Welcome to the stage, Bormik. Looks like we're having a few.
Okay,
Oh, there you go.
thank you so much, first of all. Yeah, so this is my first time at this app and talking about the startup. I'm currently pursuing MBA and I would love to listen you guys.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Bormik. It really is, and really appreciate your thoughts. And both you and Radesh obviously are here to learn. And you know what? One of the great things about the Complete Entrepreneur, I find, is it's times where I'm learning as well. We're all learning from each other, and we're learning from other entrepreneurs who have been there and done that. So thank you for coming and joining us on the stage. If you want to mute your microphone now, that'd be great. But anyway, so
Yeah.
tips for hiring a COO. So you're there, you're running your company, and you're saying, okay, what I want to do is I want to go along and hire a COO. So I just want to jump down to Rich. Rich, so what's your thoughts around a COO and companies you may have launched? And do you have any tips on best ways of hiring them? Welcome to the stage, Rich.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks to all the mods and inviting me up. Yeah, I've been a CMO for a company that was, when I joined, was 42 million. When I left, we were at 156 over a 7-year period. So that was some pretty nice growth. And ultimately sold to a Fortune 500 company. And having different roles in 2 Fortune 250 companies in my career, and did a tech startup on the East Coast as CMO for them, and ultimately ended up moving into a COO, kind of role, not because I was asked, but because I just saw the wheels falling off the wagon. And we were in a position where we were an 8-man organization, and we really needed to make some things happen and get some product to market and channels set up, etc. And my colleague, which was the owner and CEO, we spent tremendous time together. The thing that he lacked was the ability to hire. He had just a terrible time identifying the right person. And so when I came into the organization, I picked that role up and sort of walked him, through that, and ultimately ended up taking that role over for bringing people into the company. So that was an interesting experience. I guess my tips on hiring, basically is one of the golden rules that I have is I always have a meal with the person I'm going to eat or to have potentially hire. And the reason for that is that I want to see how they treat people in a public setting, and I want to get an understanding of actually their table manners and how they interact to different things that may come up during a dinner conversation, and basically just understanding their personality outside of the interview room.
Hey, Rich, tomorrow we're actually running a session. I don't know if you're available, but we're running a session tomorrow on Startup Club called Hiring People for Your Startup. And we're literally talking about what you're talking about right now. It's Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. If you're in the audience and you want to come to it, it's great. It's usually our top show of the week. But if you were around, we'd be happy to have you on stage. We're doing an open mic tomorrow as well.
Oh, great. Yeah. If I can join, I'll certainly do that.
Entrepreneurship and what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur. When you're an entrepreneur.
Okay, we had to move him to the audience. Sorry. I think we had some technical problems there. Whatever. But no, it sounds like it's going to be a great show. If anybody in the audience wants to come and speak on that topic tomorrow, Dr. Bev, if or anybody else wants to speak, then we'd be happy to have you there.
Love to join. Thanks.
Yeah, Rich, really do appreciate your wisdom and obviously your experience there. Chris, you have something to add to that?
I actually had a question along with these lines where we talked a lot about the CEO, COO here and their role they have. A lot of companies also tend to, at certain points or with a certain frequency or whatever, hire consultants to come in and do improvement projects or whatever. So my question is like, what do you see is the balance between the two? Because in some aspects, the way I view it is that some of what the consultants do is interwoven with the role of the CEO. And so what are your guys' experience and kind of, yeah, like I said, with the balance between the two essentially?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Michele, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think it's so important for the COO and the CEO to really be on the same page. And I would say almost constantly communicating, because at the root, as we said, the COO needs to be making sure that the strategy is being executed across the whole company as well as communicated. And that sounds easy, communicating, but it's not always easy. It really means getting in there every day and having discussions and really representing to a large extent the CEO to make sure things get done, and bringing back information to the other executives on the team so they can help course correct is absolutely critical. And I would say if you're not on the same page, and that doesn't mean you agree on everything, it doesn't mean that at all. It means that you can get behind those goals and those strategies and make it happen. Then you have a real misalignment that could really hurt not only the company, but people in the company.
That's just so true what you just said there, Michele. I think, Chris, you brought up another interesting topic is the whole issue around bringing external consultants in. When is the right time to do that? And should you do that as an entrepreneur? And how do you get the most out of external consultants? That, to me, Chris, as you put your finger on a completely different topic, which could possibly be one we can schedule for a future complete entrepreneur. So I think that's actually a really interesting one. Of when should you have consultants come in, because consultants play a really important role quite often in businesses. But anyway, I just want to jump down to Robbie. It's great to see you on The Complete Entrepreneur, and welcome to the stage. We've got a few minutes left, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Welcome, Robbie.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. First time in this room. I was really just wanting to pick the brains of the people on the panel, as something that someone regularly tells us is your organisation needs a COO. Just very quickly to set the scene, we are a not-for-profit social enterprise helping support grassroots football, soccer in Scotland. It's been running for about 10 years. For the majority of it, it's been quite comfortable turnover, around about 200 to 300k, 4 or 5 full-time staff members, myself as the CEO, and underneath it, 4 or 5 technical specialists, but nobody of any great seniority. And that's been the setup. I'm, as the CEO and the founder, I'm a great innovator. I'm a very good implementer, but I'm a terrible prioritizer and time manager in terms of my own progress and how I develop and progress the organization. I feel as though we're going at 60-70% because I'm getting so distracted by all my new ideas all the time. My issue is basically the finance. In terms of what we pay our people, it's very modest. They are part of our organisation mainly because they enjoy the culture and they enjoy being part of our vision and being part. So if we were to appoint a COO, we would either have to find somebody in the same price bracket as the rest of our team, which includes myself, and operate in the sort of bargain basement in terms of the price range, or we would have to employ somebody who was paid significantly more than the rest of the team, myself included. So yeah, just not quite sure how to approach the topic, to be honest. So any advice would be very welcome.
Yeah, look, let me tell you that you're asking some really good, big questions, and there's a few things I would say. Number one is, do you really want to grow? Is that what you want to do? That's the first question to ask yourself. Or, you know what? I've developed this culture and I really enjoy this business and I'm enjoying doing what I'm doing. Sure, I'm a bit chaotic at times. What? Things are going well as otherwise. So, is this really what you want to do, is to grow the business? The next thing is, quite often businesses, entrepreneurial startup businesses, get to the point where they need a COO. And you know what? You're going to have to pay them more than you pay yourself. Because what you don't want to do is get a bad one. You want to get a good one. And that can be quite a challenge, particularly if it's a hand-to-mouth type business. Then it could be that you actually take a salary hit because you have a bigger vision. The bigger vision is to grow the business, and then you'll get a payback down the track. But that is challenging, and that's those sort of questions that only you can answer exactly what you want to do. Jeff, do you have some thoughts on that there?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question, Robbie. And I think that when you have a small team and you're in this space that you're in, and it's a nonprofit and you're chugging along nicely, but you just feel like you're missing some things because of the points that you made, one thing you can do is look from within and see if there's someone on the current team who has the skills or the capabilities, who's more organized perhaps than you are, or more focused, or has some more financial knowledge, and offer them the opportunity to take on those responsibilities. As Colin always said, assign responsibilities, take them that role. It doesn't have to be a COO. It could be director of operations as the title at first. It could be a VP of operations, but in practicality, within the scope of your organization, they're taking on the responsibilities of a COO. And for them, that would be a great jump on their resume if they're interested in that, in those areas of skills, to be a director of operations or VP of operations. And eventually that might help them move into a COO role at a different company in the future, but it'd be a good stepping stone for them and a chance for them to take on more responsibility within your organization. So think in terms of the responsibilities you're trying to unload, not necessarily the title and the expense of a COO from that perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, that's some great advice there, Jeff. And we've had a really good time unpacking this one today. Yeah, it's a big decision hiring a COO. As you know what, it's probably going to cause you to change some old habits as well as an entrepreneur. Getting the right one, let me tell you, will free you up to work on your business rather than in your business. And the outcome of it is very likely to be growth. But getting that right person is the key. I hope you've really enjoyed today and you found you got a lot out of today's discussion. I know I did, and it's been great. But what I'd love to hear about is what's going on with Startup Club. So, what's happening, guys, with Startup Club?
800,000. And I think we're about to click over. We're a few members shy. If you are not already a member of Startup Club, please click on that little house at the top of this screen and join our club. Tomorrow, I mentioned, we are talking about at 2 o'clock Eastern on the Serial Entrepreneur Club Hour. We are talking about hiring people for your startup. And if you can put the right team together, magic can happen. So looking forward to seeing you there tomorrow as well.
Oh, that sounds like a fantastic topic, that's for sure. Also, if you're in the audience there and you're thinking, you know what, that person's really said something really interesting, just click on their profile, have a read, and you may end up following them. And I would encourage you to go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, so what's going on with the Complete Entrepreneur next week? What we're going to be doing is tackling an interesting topic, which is reducing entrepreneurial burnout. when you've been going hammer and tongs in your business and you're working your 16-hour days and 7 days a week, how do you actually manage that process? Because it's a real problem for entrepreneurs. And so we're going to be unpacking that and what does it mean? And it's a topic I think I know is going to resonate with so many people. So I look forward to seeing you at 5 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday. I'll see you there, and make sure you have a great week this week. God bless.
Bye, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everyone.